So let's revisit that Bordelaise sauce and try to bring it to the modern age with that plant-based version. So we're going to call it a Bordelaise style sauce, but we're still going to keep the basics of the sauce. So a Bordelaise sauce is typically a reduction of Bordeaux wine with some shallots, some butter, some aromatics in here. And then you're going to add this with a demi-glace or a jus of veal or beef. You're going to reduce and you're going to add some bone marrow on top and you're good to go. But here we're going to replace the meat-based jus by a mushroom jus. To make sure we've got these flavors, this very strong flavor, I'm using shiitake mushrooms, a button mushroom, these brown ones, as well as a mix of dry mushrooms. So these are cep or porcini mushroom. You can add some dried morels or anything like forest mushroom to make sure you really have this color and that deep kind of earthy taste. This is why we use mushroom, because you get that deep earthy taste. We're going to finish off with a touch of acidity, some fermented soy sauce, and some cocoa powder in here. That is actually very, very important. But for the rest, as you will discover, it is pretty straightforward. You'll find all the details on the recipe as usual. So I'm going to prepare the mise en place and show you exactly how it looks like and what we need to do to proceed. It may come as a surprise, but the mise en place to make that Bordelaise sauce, this Bordelaise style sauce, is very simple. The most important is to make the chicken juice. So we're going to be rehydrating the mushroom here with boiling water, about 200 ml of water in there. I'm trimming the end of my fresh mushrooms, a mix of shiitake mushrooms, as I've said, and the button mushrooms. And I'm going to pass them through a food processor to really have them really chopped very thinly. You can do this with a knife, but food processor is about 10 seconds. And then I thinly diced the shallots, the 2 shallots, and I've got my butter on here. So let me pass this through a food processor and show you how it looks like. And here we are. It took me exactly 5 seconds with a food processor compared to 20 minutes if you were to do this by hand. And these are the shiitake and the button mushroom. If you don't find shiitake, by the way, you can just use button mushroom. It's fine. Note I've choose brown coated mushrooms with the skin that is brown because we're trying to make a brown jus here at the end of the day. All right, so we're going to start by cooking these with the shallots and the butter, and you leave this to sit for 10 minutes until we're ready and to add this in the mixture. It's very simple, you'll see. So here we are, sauté pan because we're going to have liquid in it. You can use a frying pan if you want. I've got my butter, and we're going to first melt the butter and then gently cook the shallots in it. My butter is melted, I'm not going to waste any time. And we're going to gently cook these for maybe barely 5 minutes without coloration, okay? And that's just to release the natural flavor, the natural water. So I'm going back to my medium heat on here. And you stir regularly. So my shallots are ready, and some of you that have been making Bordelaise before may say, oh my god, the shallots are for the wine. Yes, but out of laziness and to make it really easier for home, what I'm deciding to do here, I'm going to actually divide this cooked shallots in two. I'm going to keep half of them for the wine reduction, that is absolutely needed, but I want to have some shallots as well for the mushrooms. So I'm just going to take a spoon, take half of that out and reserve it in a little container, and then we're going to add the mushrooms. Perfect, very important, no coloration on here, and I'm going to add all of my mushrooms on here. And same thing here, I'm going to be tossing everything into the butter, and we're going to gently cook this for about 5 minutes until the mushroom starts to release some of their natural water content. Looking good on medium heat, the water starts to release. I'm 4 minutes in. I'm going to add a good pinch of salt to further help the release of this natural vegetation water, as we call it. But you have to be careful because some mushrooms nowadays, they don't contain much water. The fresh mushroom from the forest, you have plenty of water in your pan. But the time is up. We're now going to add about 200 and 250 ml, roughly a cup of water in there. Anyway, it's going to reduce. And we're keeping things very, very simple here. So my mixture has reached that kind of simmering level here, and I'm going to keep it as that. So make sure you control the heat and you don't go over this, because now what we're going to do, we're going to take the dry mushroom, filter the juice out, and add everything, the juice and the mushrooms, in here as well. To proceed with this, make sure you take a really fine mesh sieve that I've got here, and I'm going to take a jug on here and pass everything through. And using a spoon, we're going to press this down. So you can see already the dark juice we have. That's what we want. Okay, we press a little bit. Okay, I'm going to reserve this, and then I'm going to pour this into the pan. So back to the pan, and you can see here our mixture is dark, but if you think of a real kind of meaty type of stock or jus that we want, it's not dark enough. So here, I'm going to pour all these beautiful juice, but I'm going to leave some at the bottom of the jar, but there's always impurities. So I like to use this measuring jug. I can see there's a little bit of sand or residue. Oh, I'm stopping, I'm leaving a little bit in here. And then with that, of course, we're going to add all the mushrooms. Same thing, raise the heat again, bring this to a simmer. My mushroom jus here has reached the simmer, and what's important here is to reduce it by half. So you want to end up with 250 milliliters maximum to 200 milliliters to be good. So we're gonna have a nice concentrated flavor. So I'm gonna put this on the side of the stove, and I'm gonna continue with the wine reduction. Now the wine reduction, very easy. Remember, I've got my shallots that are already cooked, so I don't need to bother with anything. I'm putting my pan on a medium to medium low. I'm gonna spread my shallots on here, and all what I'm gonna do here is to add my wine. So I've got my Bordeaux wine. You can use about 1 cup of wine, and up, and we're gonna bring this to a light boil. The wine has now reached a little boil. That's gonna let the alcohol evaporate, but we're not gonna want to keep this to boil too hard. Just gonna reduce it for a very light boil. And all what it is to really reduce that wine until there's like about 1 tablespoon left in the pan. But before we keep on going, we're gonna add some thyme and a bay leaf. Now, sorry for the smoke. I put a bay leaf on here, and then a few twigs of thyme, okay? And we're gonna leave this to reduce gently. So by the time this is ready, typically your mushroom is gonna be ready as well. So when you arrive towards the end, you will see that your wine, you can reduce your heat, by the way, don't leave it always when it's almost dry at high heat. And you see that kind of really darkish color, and it starts to be reflecting the light. It's going to reach that level of a glaze, sorry. It is called a miroir. In French, that means the mirror finish. So when you have a large amount of wine, you have something that's so reduced that you could almost see yourself into it when it's really reaching that glaze consistency. You see, it starts to happen here. Now, we don't have enough wine for that, but I'll show you exactly how it looks like here, even with that small amount. So I'm done with the wine. As you can see, there's really next to nothing left. Barely a tablespoon is almost dry, and it's very hard to see, but the coating of these shallots, and it's very dark. This is the beginning of the mirror, but you would need much more wine, like half a liter at least, to really have a coating of sauce in here. But we're just making a small amount of sauce. So I'm going to leave this on here. What I'm going to do now, the mushrooms are ready. I'm going to strain the mushroom jus into a bowl to make sure there's no residue, and then we're going to add this to our reduction. The mushroom jus, same thing. A fine mesh sieve. I've got all of the mushrooms in here. I've got the juice, and I'm going to be pressing now. You can put this into a muslin cloth or cheesecloth to get as much juice as you can. Otherwise, just with a spoon, and you press and you press. And you keep the mushrooms for something else. Stuffing is a good idea for a chicken. A bit of breadcrumbs in here, parsley, cognac, some pork mince, salt and pepper, and you're good to go. You can use this for a pie as well, or quiche. So here we are, I've got my 250 milliliters of sauce, and we're not making much sauce. And keep in mind that a Bordelaise sauce is always something that's all about reduction. So yes, you start with lots of wine, you reduce to nothing. You start with lots of jus, you reduce it again, and we're not done with the reduction. So now we're gonna pour this into the wine reduction and continue to reduce, and then add the final touches. So let's go, almost there. So we've got the wine reduction, which is typically the base of the Bordelaise, with the shallot, with the aromatics, and instead of pouring in here a demi-glace of veal or beef, I'm keeping some residue in here, we're using simply a nicely reduced mushroom jus, and you can see the color, very, very dark. And from here, we're gonna raise the heat slightly, and we're gonna be again reducing. So the reduction on here, to finish the sauce, there's 2 schools. You can go only by reduction until you get barely 100 ml of sauce. And that's the Escoffier style. It's gonna have all the flavor and a natural thickening of the sauce without any thickness. Or you can reduce a little bit and start using things like arrowroot, potato starch is something I like to use, beurre manier if you want, and eventually cornstarch. But the classic reduction is always the best method. So here we are, the reduction is done. I've got about 200 ml left, and this is where you can just add a touch of thickeners, add the final ingredients I'm going to give you, and you can start serving. But for me, I'm going to go the extra step further. I'm going to pass that sauce through a sieve into my special little pan and add my final reduction and touches in there to remake a kind of almost like restaurant quality types of sauce, to have something as best as we can. So there we have it. I've transferred everything. The first thing I'm going to do here, for the one that wants to follow here, is to test the sauce. You taste it. And then we're going to start to add the adjustment. That's very good, actually. A tad of salt for me. I like to have some black peppers, a mixed peppercorn, single origin. And we're going to mix the whole lot on here. I'm taking another spoon. And with that, Now, the special touches. Now, if your sauce is not acidic enough, you can add a touch of balsamic vinegar. I think my one was quite acidic. I'm adding half a teaspoon of soy that's marinated and a touch of cocoa powder. So the cocoa powder is add some really earthy note that I've loved. So you see that's how much I put in. And mix the whole lot. A spoon on here. Don't use a whisk typically with sauces like this, otherwise it's going to whiten the sauce, even though I've been using a whisk before. And we are going to be done here. So I'm going to do a final reduction, and for the one who wants, you can add a teaspoon of butter in here when the heat is off and swirl it in like this. I'll do this at the end. But the big question, what are we going to be eating with this? Well, I'm going to be pan frying some king oyster mushrooms with some oyster mushroom as well, just with some butter, olive oil, maybe a hint of garlic, some parsley. And we're going to use that sauce to drizzle over and to have a vegetarian starter or even a main. Right. Before I'm adding the butter in the sauce, that is just before serving, I'm pan frying some king oyster mushrooms. I'm going to add a touch of garlic, there's a little bit of olive oil in here, and a bit of parsley, as we do. Classic French style, nothing extravagant, and a bit of a toss. That is going to be it. And then we're going to be serving. All done. So the garlic very briefly, and remember these are not ceps or porcini, they are king oyster mushroom that looks like it, and they're very meaty, and I like this consistency. So we're now ready. I'm going to put this on a plate, and we're going to finish the sauce now, and then we're going to serve. So I've slightly warmed up my sauce. Now it's thickened slightly. Look at this coating power. Beautiful sauce in here. And this is a revisited Bordelaise. And I'm adding barely half a teaspoon of butter in here. And I'm not using a spoon or anything. I'm just going to swirl the pan like this. Okay. For the one that I follow till the end, final testing and the consistency with the addition of butter. Look what it does. You've got that superb glossiness on here. It really coats the spoon. And let me try that beautiful sauce. It's absolutely intense. I love this earthy note, very concentrated. You would not even know that this is made with a mushroom jus. Beautiful, and it's served. The table is served, and here is my revisited Bordelaise sauce, plant-based, perfectly suited for vegetarian. And I decided to serve this as a starter. So we've got pan-fried king oyster mushrooms, tossed in garlic and parsley with a drizzle of Bordelaise. The Bordelaise that we have here really looks like the original. It keeps the core aspect, so you've got the Bordeaux wine, the reduction. It's nice, rich and dark, and you can drizzle it over. Really fragrant. And if you're a vegetarian, if you want to impress some friends, well, let's dig in. So you can just use your mushrooms. Nice and meaty, the king oyster mushrooms. Cep would be better. But to be honest, as a second choice, it's really not bad. And that sauce, goes well with mushroom. I just didn't add a touch of garlic, not too much. And the sauce got these real earthy notes. A touch of umami with the soy and the cocoa powder. Really kind of this earthy note that links the mushroom to the ground, you know, the soil and stuff. It's really interesting. It may really surprise you. I'm happy with the result. Yum. Now the final verdict, of course, did I manage here to bring that Bordelaise style sauce in the modern era, removing the greasiness of this veal stock, of this beef stock, and transforming that dish into a plant-based product, which is really the crave at the moment, and a lot of chefs are trying to do so. I think for me it was a good success, but tell me what you think in the comments, especially if you try the sauce, and tell me if you can even see or feel the difference between the real Bordelaise and this, because to be honest, there's not too much difference. And if we're doing a blind test, I'm pretty sure some people would not know there's no meat inside that sauce. But that's it for the video. It was a bit long-winded, a lot of reduction. This is my take on the revisited Bordelaise sauce. I'll see you all next time on the French Cooking Academy. And don't forget the school. If you want to learn that kind of techniques, join us. We got a membership that you can join anytime, access to all the courses or plenty of other courses. Check our website for details. See you all next time. Bye-bye.
You're up my